COVID-19. This webinar is presented by Humber and Guelph-Humber's Transition to Work Committee. I do want to welcome to this webinar and also to day 124 of the COVID-19 pandemic. You've made it this far, people. Keep it up. So in light of that, we'll start off with a couple of memes. Here on the first screen, we have, if your job is considered non-essential, this time off is a great time to reconsider your career choices. And our second one is, all of a sudden, everybody has become Sheldon. You see Sheldon with the spray. So that's not to make light of the situation, because what we have today are very, very important topics that are dear to everyone's hearts as part of the facilitation group. So before we get into introductions, I want to set up a couple of reminders for the webinar today. Firstly, this session will be recorded and will be, you can be viewed later on through different channels of which we'll share. So we want to make sure participants are aware that this is being recorded. If you have your webcam on, you may be visible as part of the recording. So if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Otherwise, go ahead and turn off your camera. Secondly, we have an ASL interpreter available today, Catherine. If you would like to make use of our interpreter, Catherine, please click on the 3 dots next to Catherine's name on the screen, and you can click pin to maintain Catherine's screen on your home page. Okay. Captioning is also available through here. Similarly, you might see the CC option somewhere on your screen, so go ahead and click that. It is auto captioned, so there may be a couple of errors which we'll fix before when we put up the recording. Lastly, this is an interactive session, so feel free to ask questions. I think because we have such a large group, it might be more appropriate to put your question down in the chat box, and we have several members of our team moderating who will politely interrupt our speakers and inject some questions. There may be some time towards the end of this webinar for questions. So the webinar is taking place from right now onwards till 2 p.m. In a couple of moments, somebody from the committee will be sending a link to our check-in form. It's just to get a sense of who is in the audience today. Your name and email are optional, but certainly your status of whether you're a Humber student, a Guelph-Humber student, an alumni, or somebody in the community that's been lucky enough to hear about this webinar. So please complete that very, very brief check-in form. It will take you 6 seconds, and so we can track that data. And finally, following the webinar, we're going to send out in the chat a feedback survey based on today's webinar. Normally, the Transition to Work Committee runs, we're a very hands-on group and we like to run events on campus, but because of the pandemic and restrictions, we switched over to this webinar format for the first time. So this is a development process for us. Your feedback is always welcome, and hopefully getting a sense of what kind of impact this may have had. I mentioned that this webinar is brought to you by Humber and Guelph-Humber's very fabulous Transition to Work Committee. A couple of the members are pictured here. We're made up of various groups on campus. Firstly, Accessible Learning Services, of which I'm based, and a couple of members of the team are. Secondly, members of the Advising and Career Services. And lastly, Humber and Guelph-Humber, and lastly, Humber's Community Employment Services. So we've worked together to put this event in place. Our goal as a committee is to develop and run events on campus that equip individuals with disabilities with the knowledge and skills needed to make a successful transition in the workforce. We're very hands-on, and this is one of several webinars and events to follow in the coming year. So again, thank you for joining us. Much of the work that this committee is grounded on is recent research around disability and employment. And I would like to share a couple of stats with you before we get started. So firstly, we have an image here with a person kind of stuck in a maze. And sometimes disability and employment supports in the community and through the government can feel like a maze with various entrance points and exit points. And this can create quite a lot of confusion and anxiety for people. In 2017, a Stats Canada report found that 22% of Canadians identify as having one or more disabilities. So that's just over 1 in 5 people. And when we break this down further, we see that the most commonly reported disability types across Canada, and certainly at our institution, are individuals who live with different mental illnesses, chronic pain, mobility conditions, and learning disabilities. But in saying that, we see that these are mostly invisible disabilities. Another report commissioned by CIBC also in 2017 found that half of Canadians living with the disability have part-time or full-time employment, compared to just over 80% of Canadians without a disability have employment. So we see that people with disabilities over time have higher rates of unemployment and underemployment. So those who may be working tend to be in jobs that are lower skilled, not representative of their actual capabilities. We also suspect that these numbers might be an underestimate now during this pandemic, where we've seen opportunities for employment appear to be dwindling, more intense competitions, and we have to acknowledge that entering the workforce as somebody with a disability is laden with a range of barriers. And lastly, with a bit of doom and gloom news, I want to share one more stat from a 2016 research report that, and I'm just going to read the quote out here. So a quote was mentioned that said, "The employment landscape for people who have a disability is a sad litany of unmet needs. A high percentage of people who have a disability want to work. Many of them are highly capable and reliable. Most people who have a disability can be easily and inexpensively accommodated in the workplace, yet many, if not most of these willing workers remain excluded from the workforce." But we're here to say that it doesn't have to be this way. There are a range of resources and supports available within the college, outside of the college, in different agencies to help individuals with disabilities find and keep meaningful employment. And today's webinar is grounded in that belief that there are good jobs for everybody who wants them. So, before we get started with our main speaker, I would like to invite one of our fantastic student alumni, Mr. Jody Campbell, to share a few words. For those who don't know, Jody graduated from Humber's Business Marketing Diploma in 2015. Jody, thank you very much for joining us today. I'll give you the floor for about 5 minutes time. Thanks again.
Hi, everyone. That is me. Wow. So that's a picture of me when I graduated. It was on my alum card before the beard and before the gray hairs. My name is Jody, like Jeff said. I'm very grateful to be here simply because I was like many of the students that started my journey with Humber before graduating, and I discovered along that journey that I actually had some needs that the regular course loads and my regular aim of trying to complete schooling successfully was being challenged by, I was having some difficulties with. So I discovered that I had some invisible barriers and disabilities of my own. That was sleep apnea, which I didn't discover until I think 2014 by accident. That was simply just taking a family member, my grandmother at the time, to her doctor who had it, and filling out a questionnaire, and by stroke of luck answered the same responses that someone who does have it has. And that actually opened up the door for me, which leads to other symptoms of having it. For anyone who doesn't know what sleep apnea is, it's just simply having moments where you stop breathing when you sleep. And it is manageable, thankfully, through like machines that just blows air into your lungs softly while you sleep to help lower the amount of time that it happens. Okay, so since that point forward, it's always been really important to me to try and be honest with myself, and that led me to just asking myself questions like, what are the things I can do? What are the things I can't do? And what do I need help with? Disability service was there to help me with accommodations. And that led to me being able to successfully finish school in 2015. So much so that I was actually a part of competitions representing the school on a provincial level. And for the first time, we actually came in second for that department. I'm a business marketing graduate, and we went to OSTC or some acronym like that. It was the first for Humber College that they came in second. I say that to say that wasn't an individual effort, that was a group effort, and I was a part of that. And I want anyone that is hearing me that's a student or potential student looking to graduate or still going through with their classes and schooling, you can accomplish the things and even greater things that you weren't aware of. To kind of wrap it up, since I've graduated, I was fortunate enough within a month to go to an employment center to try and get some help finding employment. It so happens that I was hired by that employment center on a 1-year contract. And that 1-year contract was 5 years ago. I'm still with that same employment center. And the cool thing is, I never actually got to go into business marketing for the diploma that I graduated with. Instead, I actually apply those same concepts with people, telling the stories of people to employers that are looking for people that they normally may overlook, including those with disabilities. So that's me in a nutshell. Feel free at any points later on today if you have any questions to ask. And with that, I'll actually turn it back over to Jeff.
Okay, great. Jody, thank you for your words. Thanks for sharing a little bit about your experience. Sometimes the qualification we leave school with isn't necessarily the field that we enter, but I mean the whole point of post-secondary is to not stay the same. It's to change and to develop a lot of these transferable skills. And clearly yours is one of telling stories to others, telling other stories, and helping people be in the know. So we appreciate you taking the time to tell your story today. So thank you. On with the main event. We have a couple of outcomes for this webinar to follow. So by the end of this webinar, we hope that participants can articulate at least 3 benefits that people with disabilities bring to the workplace. Secondly, explain the value. Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure, it's Stephanie speaking, that everyone can access and see Catherine Gomez for the ASL interpreting. We're having some issues.
Okay.
So I want anyone who cannot see Catherine to click on her name in the participants, and they can pin her to the screen.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie, for reminding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. A second outcome of this webinar is to explain the value of disclosing your disability in the workplace, to list at least 3 signals to tell you that an employer is inclusive or disability friendly, we could say. And lastly, to discuss the benefits of online job search platforms like Discoverability. Remember, we will be posting a link at the end of this webinar in the chat box to collect some feedback through a form. So just keep an eye out for that towards the end. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Lisa Kelly. Lisa, here's your photo here.
Oh, that's a typical photo. I'm not going to forgive you, Jeff.
I know. Well, you know what? Ask permission later. Ask for forgiveness later, right? That's my motto. So this is Lisa. Lisa has done many things in her life, but more recently, she's a program manager at Ontario Chamber of Commerce and is very acquainted with the discoverability program. So based on this, Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you in advance for lending us your time, your effort, and your expertise.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And I'd really like to thank Humber for allowing us to come today and talk to everybody about job search and disability. A little bit, I think, about the more relevant elements of my background is actually that I have a disability. I have lived experience of a disability. I have experience as a job coach and a job developer, helping people with disabilities find work. And I have worked a lot with business, and that's what I currently do now to help them become more inclusive of people with disabilities. Is everyone able to see my screen? Yes? Okay.
Yes, it looks great.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. So you'll see my name and my contact information. I've just emailed a deck that we will share out with all the participants with links to, you can contact me. There's my telephone number. And at the end, if you want to sign up for the program, there will be links on a person that you can contact if you have any difficulties. We will be recording this session again. So if you have your webcam on, you will be visible. Okay, what I thought we'd talk about today, but this is completely open and I'm completely open to shifting to whatever your questions come up with, are why we think you should use discoverability, and I'll tell you what it is and why we think it's important. I will talk to you about how disability and difference in the workplace can be a competitive advantage. We'll talk to you about job search for people with a disability, particularly around disclosure and accommodations. And finally, what I think are some signals that an employer can send out that they're disability friendly and that this would be, a good employer to work with. To that end, I've actually asked two employers to join us because I think that you can hear it from their mouths. Both of these individuals are highly respected. I've worked with them for a number of years. So I'm going to introduce first Louis DePalma. And this is a potential conflict of interest. I do work for Louis since November. We have worked together for over 5 years. Louis is the Vice President of Small to Medium-Sized Enterprise Programs at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And he has a great deal of experience working with those businesses across Ontario. He's had a lot of, he doesn't want me to share his governmental background, but he's been a leader in a number of ministries. Louis, do you want to just say a couple things about yourself to introduce before we get started?
Sure, I'm extremely passionate about what we're going to talk about today. I got involved over about a dozen years ago, working with the AODA and helping businesses understand, their obligations under that piece of legislation. But much more than that, really, it's about breaking down barriers, becoming more inclusive, and really embracing a demographic that isn't as prevalent as in the workforce as it should be. I just want to say, you heard the stat at the beginning, 22% of the population. Just from an economic standpoint, can we as a community, as a society, a province, a nation, can we really afford to leave, 22% of the population out of the labor market? Just economically, it makes no sense to me. And when you take a look at the great skills that the demographic brings to businesses, it's really, really important that we make the proper connections to allow persons with disabilities and businesses to connect so they can both enrich each other from the skill sets that they bring. So I'll
Great.
just stop there, Lisa, okay?
Yes, I'll have to cut Louis off probably at points, so he's used to it, everyone. Okay. We're also joined by Ronald Peters, and Ronald is a diversity and inclusion employment specialist with Royal Bank of Canada, RBC. He's been there for 7 years. He started as a banking advisor, providing everyday banking, investment, and credit advice. And he's moved into the role as the inclusive recruitment specialist, where he works on attracting diverse talent to the bank. He coordinates a lot of events and workshops, and I think he's going to mention one today when he introduces himself. And he provides referrals to recruiters and managers across the various business groups within the bank. He also is a great source of guidance around disclosure and accommodation for candidates with disabilities. Thank you for joining us, Ronald, and would you like to say a few words? I said Ronald, right? Yeah, okay. Are you able to access your microphone, Ronald?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I was just saying I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Just a little bit about myself. I myself am a person with a disability. I can't use my right hand. It was a disability from birth. So I bring a very direct perspective, first-person perspective to the disability and overall inclusion space. I think it was Jody was his name. Just a little bit of my background. I actually studied marketing and strategy in school, but like Jody, I did not go into that directly. But I have been able to use my storytelling skills in terms of helping to encourage candidates to come into the bank, and certainly to position them with managers to get them interviews and potentially get hired.
Thank you, Ronald. And actually, Ronald and I have been working together for the last couple of years on a storytelling workshop that we give on how to create and develop very strong storytelling abilities when you job search, because I think it's fundamental for any job searcher. Before I talk about the reasons that I think people with disabilities make great employees, I want to ask each of you, we'll start with Ronald, what you believe that people with disabilities add. Why do they add value to the company? Why is this of interest to RBC?
Sure. So, persons with disabilities bring something unique to the table. They bring a different perspective than we have always had. The world of business is very dynamic, always changing, and what we've just gone through now is just another major change. For banking, I'll speak for banking specifically. Traditionally our competitors was the other sort of big 5 banks, but there are now new competitors who don't have a brick and mortar setup. It's somebody with an app. It's somebody somewhere, wherever they are. They don't have to do some of the same things that other big banks need to do. So in order for us to compete and keep winning the hearts and minds of customers, we need fresh ideas and new perspectives. So any opportunity to bring that different perspective into the bank, we are certainly anxious and eager to do it. And I'll also say this as well, and this speaks to the broader topic about representation. The bank has a firm belief that we must reflect the communities we serve. So our communities, our customers are a diverse bunch of people, so we should be reflecting that as well. In our branch network and in sales and service, when somebody comes into the branch, they want to see somebody who sort of looks like them or maybe looks like a family member. I know when I was in the branch and I would come out and meet customers and I'd take them back to my office, on many occasions, people were so excited because they say, I have a family member who has a disability, maybe a child coming up, and they felt encouraged by this because they want to know that their child has a future working and stuff like that. So there's a lot of benefits and a lot of value from that perspective as well.
Thank you. And Ronald, do you want to briefly mention the upcoming recruiting event you have? I'm going to let you talk about that.
Sure, definitely. I was going to mention it later, but I'll certainly mention it now. So you know, as part of my role, I actively do recruitment and sourcing for candidates with disabilities. And we actually have a networking event. Well, it's a virtual event similar to this one. And it's going to be hosted by myself and our RBC insurance group. They are very interested in increasing their representation of persons with disabilities into that group. So it would be an information session, but when you register for that event, your resume will be reviewed for potential roles in our advice center, in our field sales roles, and for those who are sort of more analytical in the way you approach things, we will have a couple analytics roles that they will be looking at resumes for. So again, just to clarify, it's just a general information session. We'll just be talking about RBC insurance and about the different types of roles, but your resume would be reviewed thereafter. And if you are somebody who fits what we're looking for, we will be most likely contacting you between September to November. That's when they're looking potentially to start recruitment.
Okay, and I'll turn over to Louis now, and I'll ask you the same question, Louis. I know you talk to businesses across Ontario, small businesses. How do you know that they are interested in hiring people with disabilities?
Well, let me start by saying, over the past number of years, I've had the real pleasure of crisscrossing this great province of ours and meet with businesses. I've met with businesses in many communities, small communities, large communities, you know, manufacturing businesses.
Sorry, Louis, I'm going to interrupt you. If somebody has their microphone off, please mute it. And Louis, if you want to continue, sorry.
Okay, so I was just saying that, you know, I've had the pleasure of crisscrossing this great province of ours and meeting with many businesses and across whether it's a large community, a small community, northern community, rural community, etc. And over the years, presented over 350 workshops on this subject matter. And I have to tell you, business is interested in finding talent. Business is interested in finding the right person to meet the needs of their organization. So, you know, the feedback that I receive is, I need to know more about this. I need to know about where do I find talent? You know, how can I access the talent? Now, you have to appreciate that many of the businesses that I speak to, because, you know, I'm responsible for the small and medium-sized enterprises, are those businesses, you know, where the president is doing 17 things. You know, they don't have HR departments. You know, they don't have specialty recruiters that they work with. So it's extremely important that as businesses, you know, want to tap into the talent pool, we need to really create a proper system of navigation, or a proper way to channel talent to the businesses and the businesses to the talent. So I would say, from what I've heard, and it's anecdotally, but you can appreciate, this is talking to thousands and thousands of business over the years, very much interested in finding the right talent in the right place. That's what business is all about. It's all about getting the talent that meets their needs so they can serve their communities and their customers better. Very positive response from all the businesses that I've worked with.
Thank you, Louis. So let's talk about that competitive advantage. So I told you I wanted you to leave today knowing at least a couple things that you could share with employers about if you're a person, if you self-identify as a person with disability, and that can be self-identification on our program. And I know with Ronald's, you do not need to have medical proof. This is not a program like that. So if you self-identify as a person with a disability, there's a lot of data that show you make, in general, a great employee. In fact, there was a Bank of Montreal survey in 2014, and 77% of small businesses who hired people with disabilities said they met or exceeded expectations. If you just go in and add that to your story, you're already giving a proof point to companies that you come from a talent pool that is actually as or more productive than people without disabilities, that people with disabilities tend to stay in their job longer, be more loyal to the company. What employer doesn't want that? In terms of costs, most accommodations cost absolutely nothing, and 93% of them are a one-time cost of less than $500. And when you look at the cost of recruiting and training someone, that's pretty minimal. The last thing I'll say on the small to medium size, but even I train with RBC at times, we're here to assist job seekers, employment service providers, post-secondary institutions, and job seekers with training on all these kinds of topics so that everybody understands the benefits, and we can do a better job of connecting talent to business. A few other facts, and again, you'll get out these fact sheets. I don't want to spend a lot of time with them because you can look at them and quote them, and I've cited them. Mm-hmm. There's a huge cost.
Sorry to interrupt you, Lisa. We just have a question over here from Hasnain asking about what skills are in demand. Sounds like for small business specifically. And we have someone's hand up.
Okay, so I think that in terms of what skills are there, it's all the things you're going to see on this screen, and it seems pretty simplistic, but I think, and I'll get Ronald and Louis to chime in here, most employers want somebody who's going to be productive, who's going to like the job and stay in the job because it costs a lot of money to hire somebody, who has a great attitude, who will show up for work when they say, and will work safely. Beyond that, a lot of businesses can train for the other elements. So yes, your education is important, and if it's specific to your field, you need those qualifications, but what's needed is the ability to be innovative, to be flexible, to come to work and be productive. Ronald, do you have anything to add in terms of that?
Yeah, no, you certainly captured some of the broad sort of things that we are looking for. Granted, different roles may have different requirements, but for example, for most of all, I'll just give one of the more high volume areas that we recruit for, and it's part of that insurance event. But general sales and service with the bank, just some of the other skills we look for. It's your ability to build relationships. A great communication, right? Some of these roles are over the phone, so we want to know that you can articulate yourself well, and that you're a people person, that you love dealing with people and things like that. As you mentioned, we will train you for sure for some of the more specific aspects of the role, but some of the broader skills that you require, it's things that you probably do naturally and probably stuff that you will learn in school. And just apply it in our environment.
Perfect. And Louis, what do you think small business is looking for?
Yeah, I would add to that and echo what Ronald is saying. It's, apart from technical skills where you need some technical skills to actually perform a specific function at a job site, really employers are looking for soft skills, right? They're looking for people that can work in teams, that have good communication skills, they're analytical, they're innovative, they're willing to help all the time, right? So they're looking for people who actually have a great sense of building an organization as part of a team. And that's really what employers are looking for, in addition to those technical skills. So that's why, sometimes when I talk to folks that are looking for work, and they take a look at maybe their educational background and they say, gee, I'm not qualified for that position. Well, that's not necessarily true. Unless the position is highly technical, it's really the other skills that will carry the day for you with an employer. And I can use myself as an example. I never one day worked in the field that I studied for. Not one day in my entire career. Why? Because skills are all transferable. And that's really the key in how we should take a look at things. It's not what I actually studied for, but what skills have I developed apart from those technical skills that are cross-marketable, so that then I can meet those requirements of the employer from the non-technical side, the soft skills side. Extremely important.
I love that you both have brought that up, and it actually ties back in again what Jody was saying at the beginning. It's how we tell our stories that's going to help you get a job. And just having a story that is about your abilities, particularly those soft skills, I think, is going to be, you're going to go through so much job change. I too, guys, I'm a political science grad. I'm not working in political science and haven't for, at any time in my career. So you have to be flexible. And oftentimes people with disabilities have great problem solving and an innovative approach because you've had to navigate the barriers that are in your way, and that you can weave that into your story as well. Just a quick moment on the Discoverability Network, and there's links embedded within our PowerPoint. The Discoverability Network was created by the Chamber to do exactly this, to connect you to businesses. So the RBC is a member, and they're advertised positions on here, but we have a lot of businesses from the Chambers, 135 chambers with 60,000 businesses that, are part of the Chamber that have access to this. It has 3 parts: an online job matching platform that I really encourage you to sign up to. It's kind of like a LinkedIn, but it's for people with disabilities and it's for businesses that value people with disabilities. The free training, and then networking events. So we've done a couple networking events with different organizations such as RBC. Want to talk briefly about barriers. So people
Hi,
with
hi, Lisa. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
We just had a few hands up, and so I just want to address them before we continue. Catherine, would you like to ask your question?
It was in response to a slide from prior. The stats were just being listed a little too fast for me to interpret. So if you could just be cognizant of lists and maybe go a little bit slower for me because I can't keep up. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
We have 2 more hands. Francis Opoku, would you like to ask your question? I think Francis asked the question in the chat, actually. Francis has asked, if one person has their disability under control slash manageable, should a disabled person tell the employer about their disability, especially if it's an invisible disability?
I'm just getting into that section on disclosure. So disclosure is an art form. I have an invisible disability. Ronald shared that he has a visible disability. And I think it really depends on a lot of factors. It depends on what is the job, what is the company, how do you feel about it? It depends on how do you think your manager, does the company seem to be, open? With any federally regulated organization like a bank, a communications company, or a transportation, yes, disclose. They are regulated under the equity employment laws, so they're pretty good at this. Actually, they're not pretty good at this. They're great at this. And that's good to go. I think how you disclose and when you disclose is sometimes as important as whether you disclose. So when I was an employment counselor, what I found often when people disclose, they disclose details about their disability, which is actually not disclosure. Disclosure is actually disclosing the changes that you require in the workplace in order for you to do your job. So I'm going to use myself as an example here. I disclosed to Louis when he hired me that I have a disability. I did not disclose what it was because if you look on this screen, challenges, I have a stigmatized disability. And I was worried that the team wouldn't be open or would be worried about me. So I just told Louis, I have a disability. I'm an amazing worker. You've seen my work before, but I may require 1 day a month off, to be able to spend at work from home. And Louis said, great, let's go. That was it. No details, no diagnosis, when did I figure it out? Nothing about, oh, this has been so challenging. People make me feel bad about this. It was simply, what do I need in the workplace? Now, about 2 months in to the job, I learned that we work in an open concept environment. And I had never worked open concept, and I got overwhelmed. And one day I just left and went home. And Louis called me and said, Lisa, what happened? And I said, actually, Louis, I got overwhelmed. I find it very noisy on occasion, on a busy day in our office. And so Louis and I talked about what we could do about that. And Louis said, why don't you sign out one of the smaller boardrooms? If that's not available, why don't you just work from home on those days? That's an accommodation that came that I hadn't disclosed the need for when I joined, and Louis was more than happy to give that to me. So you can ask for accommodations at different points. You can disclose partially like I did. I have a disability, here's what I think I'm going to need, but it's perfectly acceptable to change that as time goes on. Louis, do you want to add from the employer perspective anything on that and what your feelings around disclosure are? And then I'll ask Ronald.
Yeah, I would say it's a very personal decision. You know, when I speak, I'm asked that question a lot, and it is a personal decision. From an employer's perspective, you know, let's think about, let's just step back a bit and think, what does an employer really want from an employee? An employer wants the employee to work to their maximum capabilities. That's really what an employer is looking for. So, you know, over the years, and I've done a lot of hiring in different jobs that I was at, that's what I'm looking for. So what I'm interested in knowing as an employer, I'm really, you know, it's not interested in knowing that someone has a certain condition. I'm interested in how can I maximize your potential in the workplace? That's what I'm interested in. So if there's something that I need to know as an employer that allows me to help you maximize your potential in the workplace, then I'm very interested in this. And that's where, you know, the discussion, and Lisa, you just, you know, explained some examples that we kind of, through our interaction together. But that goes on every day in employment with employers across the entire province. There's always a discussion. And I know Ronald, you know, from a large company perspective, will probably echo this. These discussions happen every day where someone says, you know what, I need some help here. And I need some help because if I get that help, I can actually do a better job. Or I need an adjustment in the way this routine, because, you know, every company has a routine, but not all routines fit everybody. So you have to have that flexibility in your workplace to adjust your routine to meet a requirement of one of the employees. And that's where I suggest that conversation be had. If you need to have some adjustment made in your organization to help you maximize your potential, then that's a good time to have that discussion.
I think that's a great example, and I see a question came up. Okay, what companies are willing to do this? We work with the Retail Council of Ontario. They have an amazing booklet on accommodations in the workplace for all the retail businesses in Ontario. So I can't think of a sector increasingly that isn't concerned about this, because we're an aging population. There's more and more people, you know, with disabilities as we age. Pain and flexibility are the number 1 and 2 according to Stats Canada. And so it's important. I also think Louis' point about, I think of accommodations. So when you disclose, you're disclosing the need for an accommodations is really about enhancing productivity. And again, what employer isn't interested in that? Ronald, do you want to add anything to this discussion?
Yeah, sure. No, and Louis hit it right on the nail on the head. We really want to set you up for success, because we hired you because we saw something that was really good in your resume and your interview. But we want to make sure that you have all the tools and resources that you could be successful on the job and then add value to the larger organization. And I would say this as well, for us, this whole idea of setting you up for success and providing accommodation doesn't just start when you get hired. Actually, throughout the entire recruitment process, we try to provide accommodation. So I get emails all the time, you know, from someone if they require accommodation for an interview. So I will hire an ASL interpreter to make sure they're there in the interview, because I want, when my hiring manager is asking you questions, that you can really give the answer that really shows the full breadth of your skills and abilities. And that's just one example. But, you know, throughout the recruitment process, we try to provide the accommodation. And that's and it's kind of tying to this disclosure conversation in terms of when to disclose. And you're right, it really depends. And, you know, we don't really, you know, it's a personal decision, but sometimes the earlier, the better. Now, in our recruitment process, when you apply to a job, many of the roles require that you complete an online assessment. So we just send you a link and you're doing these questions online. Sometimes there's a timed section of the assessment. Now, of course, somebody with a disability, depending on what the disability is, might not be able to complete a time section on time. So we've actually set up a separate assessment, which is non-time. So you could take time to do the assessment at your own pace. The thing is, if you don't disclose to us that you require that accommodation, I cannot provide it because it's something that we manually have to put in place. So this whole discussion about disclosure comes in very early in the recruitment process for most candidates. So it is a process. We have the tools, resources. We want you to succeed, but you have to let us know.
And actually, because we'll stay on disclosure for a minute, but I want to talk about, so most people worry about the disclosure, I think, because of the stigma. They're worried that the employer will think they can't do it. A lot of that is how you tell your story. If your story starts with, here's my disability, instead of here's my abilities, yeah, they're going to think you're all about your disability. I mean, I don't introduce myself when I say I'm a trainer. Hi, I'm a disabled trainer with a mental health condition, and that's being really problematic for me. I mean, that's just not going to get me a job. What I would say is, hi, Ronald, I've been training companies across Canada and job seekers, you know, over 200 presentations a year on the subjects of employment, job search, and disclosure. Can I sit down and talk with you? Again, you know, you really want to practice that disclosure, and that it be that it be powerful, that it be positive, and that you practice it to make sure you're not sharing too much information. I love that Louis said, I don't really care what your disability is, I want to know how you do your job. However, for companies, so anyone who uses the discoverability job search platform, and certainly for Ronald when they're doing diversity outreach targeting, if you don't tell them you have a disability, you can't attend these events and they don't know. And so the biggest question I get is from businesses that I work with is, where are all the people with disabilities? Because we can't find them.
Lisa,
so Ronald, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's Stephanie here. I just wanted to say we have a couple of questions from the chat, and it sounds like I'm hearing that people are wondering about services that will help them connect with different types of recruitment campaigns. Emily asked about career assessments and that type of thing. Are we going to touch on community resources?
Not really. That's not been the focus. I mean, I do think when you come on our website, we have a resources page with links to local employment service providers that specialize in helping job seekers with disabilities find jobs. So if you go on our system, it's kind of designed to be it's designed to be a catch-all for everyone. We advertise the RBC events, the TD events, the Scotiabank events. Guys, just like 2 months ago, Bell Technical Solutions advertised 350 jobs that they wanted to recruit people with disabilities for. I just finished training KPMG. I just trained 2 small businesses in Hamilton that offered 47 jobs between the 2 of them. There are a ton of companies. The problem is they're scattered everywhere. So I could give one of you, I'm, for instance, working with CNIB right now. I could say that if you have vision loss or if you're blind, go to CNIB. But the problem is when Ronald has an event, he doesn't just call CNIB. There's going to be like a list of 50 organizations. So what we've tried to do with the Discoverability Network is connect. So Ronald posts his jobs, his events on our platform. You can access them, but you can access all the other banks and Bell and TELUS and smaller companies in your communities. Because I got to tell you, the biggest problem is the fragmentation of this system. The other thing is when people don't disclose, and they aren't getting what they need to be their best in the workplace, that looks like job performance issues, and people get let go. So I think there's a whole bunch of unpacking around disclosure that needs to be done. We worry about the negative consequences, but we also don't think about the upside. And the upside is, like, when I need a day to come home and work, and Louis, I think, absolutely trusts me now. When I come home, in fact, my last 4 employers have been fine with me taking days to work from home, because that's what I need. And, you know, I do an incredible amount of training. I mean, I'm going into one right after this. I think that that's the case for most people with disabilities. So you need to ask for what you need to be a superstar in the workplace. And if you're not willing to share that, the employer can't assist you. They can't even find you to recruit you. The ins and outs of disclosure, it is a personal decision. It's affected by a lot of things, right? I get that. You do not ever have to share your medical diagnosis or information, and I actually encourage you not to. The only time you'll be asked for that is if it's in relation to what accommodation is being provided. But generally, I think most employers just want to know, what do you need in order for you to be a great employee in our company? If you deal with it in a matter of fact way, in a positive way, I think that positions you well with employers. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't employers, and in the past there haven't been employers that are not open to this. That would be not, you know, be a true statement. But I think increasingly we've decided as a country, especially with COVID happening right now, that we can actually be pretty flexible and do things in a lot of different ways. And actually that's a real quality that people with disabilities bring to the workplace. Louis, do you want to add anything to that?
Maybe I could give an example. And this is a real live example. I was training in Southwestern Ontario at a session, and I had this example, so I'm going to share it. I'm obviously not going to share names in that. This was a firm who is a fairly large welding firm, and they do a lot of welding for a lot of, like, they're in the supply chain. Okay, of a major sector in the province. And they had one of their best welders who they could count on this person day in and day out to do everything absolutely on time and perfect. What happened, unbeknownst to the company, or the company didn't know why, his performance started to slip. He just wasn't doing the welding as well. There was more errors now. It wasn't being completed on time. And the folks, you know, the supervisors just didn't understand what was going on, because this is one of their best people, right? One of the best persons that they had. So what started to happen is people started to think about, this is a performance issue. We really need to go talk to this individual, because we need to find out, you know, he's not working like he used to work. And, you know, one of the supervisors said, you know, let me just have an informal conversation with this individual. And what happened through that informal conversation, happened was this. The individual said, listen, I hurt my back outside of the workplace, and I don't think it will ever get better. This is it. I'm in a lot of pain, and I just can't do the welding the way I'm doing it. I need some special chair so that I can do this. So the company and the individual engaged some, you know, people with more knowledge about ergonomics, and they actually bought a special chair for the individual, which was less than $400. So once the person got the special chair, back to being one of their top welders again. So just an example of, you know, when we talk about disclosure, you know, it is very, very personal, but what you don't want to happen is, you don't want to happen something that you need to again do the job to the best of your ability, to result in some kind of performance issue, when in fact all it takes is a short conversation with someone in the company to help with what you need adjusted.
Thank you, Louis. I see a couple questions coming in about the Discoverability Network, and I'm going to address those, but I want to finish up this discussion with Ronald and Louis before we go. So I think you can, you know, summary, disclose at any time. If safety is involved, disclose immediately. You disclose what you do differently and what adjustments will help you do your job, not details about your disability. It makes people uncomfortable, too much personal detail about anything. And finally, practice. State it like a fact, be prepared to discuss options, be positive about it. Ronald, at RBC, what are some of the most common accommodation requests that, get asked for?
Sure. Yeah. So, and just to let everybody know, we have an entire accommodation department that sets up to do the implementation of accommodations across the bank. But some of the ones I hear about the most are simple ergonomic accommodation. So it might be a chair, it might be to adjust the desk and stuff like that. So that's kind of the more common one. But it runs a spectrum. Accommodation runs a spectrum. I had one of my colleagues who is blind. He works in the finance department. So he has software that can interact with Excel and some of the other tools that he uses on a day-to-day basis. And there was one tool, one resource that we were trying to get, and it just wasn't working with our system. The accommodation turned in not to just providing the software, the accommodation was just carving out that particular part of his role and giving it to someone else and giving him another a piece of a role to do, so that he is still a full contributor to the team. So the accommodation takes many forms. So I just want people to know, while I certainly haven't come across something that we definitely couldn't do. I just want to say that we cover a broad spectrum of things.
And I think actually, employers can be pretty creative. I recently placed a young designer from Humber. He has given us permission to share his story. He's actually featured in one of our newsletters. But his accommodation was related to his interview process because he's not a great verbal presenter. So instead, the interview became about his design portfolio, where things were written out on his ideation, and he got the job, and he's just one of the top performers in a downtown consulting firm. So there can be a lot of different types of accommodations that people provide. And again, it's how you approach it, how you're going to ask for it. The value of disclosure is you're going to work your best when you're not hiding something, when you don't have to act. People do things differently, and that's okay. Actually, adaptability is a competitive advantage. I think most companies are happy when they get an employee who can be flexible and adaptable. Accommodations enhance productivity. It's the difference between making do versus being productive. And it allows businesses to better plan and provide appropriate supports. And there's lots of different ways accommodations work. They can address assumptions, the way we communicate. It could be tools that Ronald told us about, assistive technologies. It could be the work environment. I mentioned that I got overwhelmed. So once in a while, I have an option to go into a different workspace. Processes like interviews, spaces, maybe we need to have an accessible interview space. And even the way we approach things. Most often it's around assumptions, which is why a lot of my job is to go out to businesses to talk to them about these issues. Okay, I'm going to switch into the network and also some just strict job seeking. Ronald and Louis, jump in if you have something to add. When you're looking for a job, I want you to use multiple job search strategies, particularly networking. I also want you to use the full range of your job search tools. The most important of which is your story. And it's a short introduction that tells who you are, what makes you different. And it's not, hi, I'm Lisa Kelly. I recently graduated with a diploma in, and I'll show up to work in time. That is not a great story. Nobody's going to remember it, and it doesn't stand out. So you need to have something that's interesting. A story Ronald and I talked about was for a fraud agent, where it's like, hi, I want to be a fraud agent. My information was stolen when I was, 14 years old on Facebook, and it just made me want a job that stops that from happening. I like working on the telephone, great communication skills, and I can work shifts. That would get you hired. It stands out. You've given somebody your reason for why you're working. So you want something that's authentic, that's real for you, that stands out. From there, you weave it into your resume that supports everything you've then said. So there should be a lot about your communication skills. There should be a lot about the fact that you're good on the telephone. Other tools are things like discoverability and align. Now, I saw somebody say, hey, the jobs are outdated on discoverability. We are not a searchable database. So the jobs, when employers recruit, so Ronald had recently posted a couple jobs in Mississauga for candidates. Those don't show up because they're a targeted outreach, guys. So it's a job matching platform that works in the background. It's not Indeed where you search through what jobs and you decide what to apply to. What actually happens is you create a profile, the employer creates a job listing, and the computer matches. It'll send you that match, and then if you want to apply, you apply. But our system isn't designed for you to go on, look at a bunch of jobs and apply to the ones you're interested in. It's actually working for you and the employer to make sure that you have matched skill sets and the matched job description. So if you're seeing outdated, those are actually on the Magnet system. Magnet is different than discoverability. Magnet is like the engine, and we are, actually Magnet is like the solar system, and we're a planet in it for people with disabilities. And so the employers that advertise on the discoverability use a filter, and that filter allows them to recruit people who've said, I have a disability, and it shortlists them. And if there's enough people, you don't have to go outside. Sometimes we might only get 2 candidates because I need a lot of people. Ronald's, optimally going to have 50 people to talk to, right? Because he's recruiting a lot of people. So then he can open it up and said, should have a disability. And then if he can't find anyone there, he's going to have to start making telephone calls. But the whole point is it's not a job board where you cruise through. It's going to do the matching in the background. You're not going to see what those jobs are, but your profile will stay up there forever. The fact that you've disclosed you have a disability is only made visible to employers that are interested and open to hiring people with disabilities. And then you'll also be open to other Magnet jobs that are up there that, apply for everybody. Yes, the computer makes the match. That is correct, Alexander. But it's more than an ATS because we're looking also at skills, interests, certifications. It's actually, it's a lot more, it's a lot bigger than the typical ATS system. Okay, you also need a cover letter, guys. You need references, interview skills that prove that what you claim on your resume and in your story is true. Social media profiles and messaging, and then a portfolio of work, which again, our system allows you to upload work samples, which is different than, say, an Indeed. Okay. There is a huge importance to mentorship. And when you have a disability, find mentors with and without a disability. This is, I can't stress this enough. I know Ronald's been a mentor to a lot of individuals. They'll give you advice. Yeah, your resume doesn't, need some work here. You might need work here. Louis, I know you've done that too. But mentors can be, I encourage you to find a formal mentor. Don't everybody rush to ask Ronald and Louis. You need to find your own mentor that you connect with. Ideally, maybe one in your industry that may not have a disability and that can coach you on here's what in our field people look for. And maybe a mentor with a disability like a Jody, who's gone through this process, understands the frustrations, but can, and again, don't everybody rush to Jody. Find your own, but I really encourage you, be an active participant, not just passive. So mentors aren't out there to find you jobs. They're there to give you advice and guidance and to, just feedback on what you might be able to do. Create that narrative thread. Condense your abilities, your talent, your interests into just 2 or 3 sentences that aren't just facts and lists. Tell stories that are coherent, true, and engaging, and practice. Nobody is good at this if you don't practice, and you don't want to be practicing the one time you get in front of, an actual recruiter with an actual job and you, oh man, I didn't practice. Know what you need. Understand the benefits of disclosure, and if you decide to disclose, do it in a positive but non-apologetic manner. So I never apologize for having a disability. I don't feel bad about it. It's part of who I am. But I will ask for what I need. so that I can do a great job and record those agreements. Large companies automatically do that. And with small companies, we actually have tools on our website called an individualized accommodation plan, IAP, that you could say, well, here's what we've agreed to, and can make sure that we both understand what that is. Apply to inclusive employers. So how do you know if somebody's inclusive? So I think they'll ask you if you need an accommodation. I think they'll have a diversity statement. I think they'll offer alternative pathways. So Ronald told you that, he does these recruiting events. That's an alternative pathway. You're not going through their ATS. Ronald's giving you an opportunity to network with individuals outside of the traditional pathways. Companies like that celebrate diversity. So I've got a picture on the screen, where we see a walkway for somebody who's using a mobility device. There's accessible parking. There's signs on the door that say service animal welcome. They support ERGs, employer resource groups, and usually there should be a disability specific one. They publish disability related information. I do a lot of work with CBC. They just posted 13 jobs on our website, right? And they publish this. RBC publishes this. And
excuse me, Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Stephanie speaking. I just have a question here about from Lou. Does the network include general labor or entry-level type of opportunities as well?
Yes, it does. So it's everything from entry level all the way up to, we have, used to be right now in COVID, things have slowed down. I will be honest about that. But we have everything from, entry level retail all the way up to like positions that Ronald might advertise for, across all different industries and sectors. Couple thoughts on disclosure and accommodations. Know what your gaps are, know how you're going to fill them, ask for your accommodation, practice. Join us. We'd really love to see you. Again, I'm open if you have questions that we haven't answered here, or if you want to email me all of those, Kathleen, I'd be happy. And if you have need assistance signing up, here's, you would go to Boyan at boyanmitrovic@occ.ca. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Higher Ability Now. Any remaining questions for Ronald, Louis, or myself before we wrap up?
It looks like we have a comment from Alexandra saying she doesn't think there will be any chance she'll be hired because when she walks in for the interview, everyone will see I walk with a cane. Is there anything we can talk about around?
Sure. So 2 years ago, I was using a wheelchair to go any kind of distance. Ronald had me speak in an engagement, and I was using a cane for 2 years because I was having trouble walking. No problem getting employed because I train. I don't need to. It has nothing to do with me having a cane. Mm-hmm. I've spoken at universities, receptions, and if I have to get there in a wheelchair, fortunately, I don't need to right now. It's not a problem. Louis, you were walking around with a cane there for about a year or two.
Yeah, I was on for quite a while. Again, it's not the cane that should be an issue for anyone. It's, do you have the skill sets to do the job? That's really what it comes down to. So the fact that, this might be something that is visible versus something that isn't, that it's invisible, really is of no issue. It really comes down to your skill sets and your abilities. And that's really how you need to think about this. You know the job, you look at the job ad, yes, I can do this. The one thing I will say, don't let job ads scare you. Okay, if I could say this, because I got to tell you, when I was younger and I used to look at job ads because I wanted to improve myself and work for different employers, I used to read these job ads and I kept thinking to myself, boy, who are these people that have these qualifications? Because I certainly don't have them. And I know none of my circle of friends had them either. So I think what you need to do, because everyone kind of over asks, there's over ask, right? So please look at the job ads, try and distill the key features of that job ad and say, okay, I've got these skill sets, and then give it a whirl. At the end of the day, if you don't try, you will never know. So it's really all about trying, put yourself out there, get those resumes in, apply for these jobs, practice your interview skills, and tell your stories. I think the stories, again, Lisa told us, she's talked about stories throughout this presentation. Stories, I think, are key to this, because that's what someone wants to hear. Tell your story. Tell them just how good you are and how you can help them as a business grow and prosper. That's what it's all about.
Any other questions? Again, happy to answer these via. Yeah.
Sorry, Lisa, there's a number of questions coming through on the chat. Some of them are probably going to require an individualized answer. Would you recommend that they maybe email if they have an individual question about their own situation?
So always, again, I think this is where the employment centers are really helpful. Yeah. We do regular workshops and we'll be posting them. So if you sign up and create a profile, you'll get invitations to training on how to ask for accommodations, how to know what your accommodations are. We can do one on mentoring. I'll create them and we will definitely, deliver them. And those will be posted. I think we're planning to do every 1 weekly. They're free. I think it's about how to frame. I see somebody said, I'm slow in learning and performing how to do things. I might just say, and this is true for me, I learn differently. Not I learn slowly, I learn differently. I have to take more notes, but I can then refer back to them, and that way I never miss anything. That's a great way of disclosing that you have a learning difference, right? There's always going to be a positive way, because frankly, people are capable of wonderful things, and you just don't want to limit yourself. So I'm going to wrap up on that. We can send me a list of questions, Stephanie, and I'll deal with them after. Thank you, Ronald and Louis. I really appreciate your comments, and good luck to everybody on their job search.
Okay, wonderful. So just the last couple of minutes. Thank you again, Lisa, Ronald, and Louis, and Jody for sharing your time with us today, for the great resources, and also for Catherine for interpreting, much appreciated. So we will post slides and the recording on the same link that you joined this webinar on. And so we'll be posting that in the chat. Just a reminder for those of you who haven't done so, please could you fill in the check-in form on the chat? Dimple will post that on there. And Dimple will also share our feedback form link on there as well. So for those remaining in the chat, in the webinars, many people have left, that's okay. Your feedback would be much appreciated. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, taking time out, and to our speakers and to my colleagues in the Transition to Work Committee. Great job. The work continues and we'll be doing it with a smile. Thank you again, everybody. Please stay tuned in the chat for the forums and we'll see you all again. Have a great summer.
Take
Bye
care.
for now. Thank you.
Yeah.